Emil Kadlec here, footballdiehards.com, DFS Wednesday, Week 1 NFL 2021. I'm stunned. The season starts in one day, and I'm here with Jason Brady. How are you today?
I'm doing pretty good outside of needing a haircut, but yeah, I'm with you. I'm stunned and I'm excited. I'm ready to go for Week 1. We talked about it a little bit. Week 1 is an opportunity to get very different. We have not seen anything yet this season, and it's an opportunity to hopefully make some money to start it out.
Yeah, but you need a haircut?
Yes.
I'm supposedly getting one tomorrow, actually.
Oh, there you go. I need one bad.
I'm supposed to do, don't tell Bob yet, I just found out I'm supposed to do extra work for the Better Call Saul tomorrow. I couldn't tell him no, and Friday is a little bit, but it's Week 1. He's going to scream at me when he finds out. They just called me a few hours ago. I go down and take a COVID test tomorrow morning. Anyway, all right, where do you want to start?
All right, I say we start at quarterback. So we'll kind of go position by position here, talk about the players that really stick out to me. And then on Sunday, I believe with Jamie, we'll actually go game by game and pick out some stacks, talk about some strategy as well. But I think it's a good time on a Wednesday to go through the player pool. Of course, things will definitely change throughout the week. Always in the NFL, we have injuries to take a look at. Also with COVID nowadays, you just really got to monitor it throughout the week. But Sunday, everything will be updated, hopefully with injury news and then COVID news and all that good stuff. So, yeah, I say we start with quarterbacks, and up top, lots of options. Of course, you got Patrick Mahomes up there is a great option. Josh Allen's a great option. But the guy I'm looking at up top is going to be Kyler Murray going against the Tennessee Titans here. We have a 52.5-point game total, which is the second best on the slate. He has 7,600. He did average 25.4 DraftKings points last year, and he has rushing upside. That's what I'm looking at for the most, especially in cash games. You want a nice rushing yard floor, a nice floor in general. Had 133 rushing attempts last year, so I can definitely count on Murray to run the ball quite a bit. I love the matchup against Tennessee. Great sacking options, and guys we'll talk about DeAndre Hopkins, Randall Moore, who's also 3K, who we'll mention. And yeah, if I had to pay up for a quarterback, I think Mahomes and Murray are the two guys I'm really looking at. But if I had to pick one, I kind of like Murray at a discount with that rushing yard upside.
Interesting. And his DraftKings ownership is 12.8%.
Where does that rank on the ownerships?
Unfortunately, the way this is sorted, it's like the second most owned for quarterbacks. And I'm
second most
by my head, yeah. There's other players in other skill positions higher, but he's number 2 owned at quarterback.
Yeah, definitely as expected. I'm curious to hear the ownership of this next guy, and it's kind of the same thing. It's a $1,200 savings here off of Kyler Murray, but we're getting that same rushing upside, and that's Jalen Hurts going against Atlanta. I love the matchup. 48-point game total, which is not terrible, in a game where they're actually 3-point underdogs, so you can't expect them to trail, expect them to hopefully pass the ball more. And what I like about Jalen Hurts is last year in his starts, he averaged 11.5 rushing attempts. I mean, 6,400, give me 11.5, give me 10 rushing attempts. I'll be very, very happy. Solid stacking option. This is where it gets tricky for tournaments because I'm not in love with the solid options, with the stacking options for Jalen Hurts here. You have Smith, you have Rieger. I mean, if you don't really want to, I don't really want to stack Dallas Goedert or Zach Ertz. I think if I had to pick one, it'd be Smith. But I think in cash games, you're just fine to play Jalen Hurts by himself. You have the rushing yard floor. You have a phenomenal matchup in a game that probably should score pretty decent. So Jalen Hurts, it's between him or Murray. I'm trying to decide in cash. Do I want to take the $1,200 savings and play Hurts, or do you want to go up and get Murray? I think they're both phenomenal options, and I like them both. So I'm curious to hear the ownership on Hurts. Probably a lot, to be honest.
3.4%.
Ooh, I love that. I love
stunned. That. And about the same in FanDuel. That's pretty low.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
You know, obviously Atlanta had a poor defense last year, but it's a new year. You never know. And but that, you know, that's a tempting. Another, as you said, we're going to find a lot of things to try and pick through that are very tempting. Week 1.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah, the only thing, like I said, that worries me is the pass catchers. We really don't know how Devonte Smith is going to look. It's kind of a risk, and we'll talk about Smith later. I'm curious to hear his ownership on that. But moving on, another guy that stuck out to me, pretty cheap here, Joe Burrow. for Cincinnati going against Minnesota. They have a 47-point game total where they're going to be 3.5-point dogs. Like I said, 5,700. He averaged 19.8 DraftKings points last year, and he averaged 40.4 pass attempts last year. Lots of weapons, and we'll talk about it when we get to wide receivers. But these Bengal wide receivers are way too cheap. So I think it's going to be very easy, especially in tournaments, to get Joe Burrow and stack him up with a Boyd, stack him up with the Higgins. So yeah, Joe Burrow in tournaments, 5,700 with the amount of times he passes the ball. I think he's somebody to definitely look at this week.
And realize, they're going to try and run too, especially week one. Is this guy ready? Is Burrow really ready? But Mixon can catch the ball too, so that helps also. He's 9.3% owned. I don't know. I guess I consider that kind of high. It's not horrible. People just love this guy. Do you see the guy just standing on the sideline? He just has this confidence. And obviously as a rookie, he was incredible. And I love this guy. I'd almost want this guy in my dynasty teams, except I like running quarterbacks. But he's still coming back from a major surgery in week one, so there still is risk there. Chase looked horrible in preseason. Did you see those 4 balls? Oh, man, He was not ready to play. Now, they say, he did better in practice. But like you said, Boyd Higgins may be a good way, maybe a great early year stack with Burrow if you're going to try Burrow.
Yep, I'm with you. I do like Burrow quite a bit, and I like him in that offense. They're just going to give him a lot of opportunities. So Burrow's somebody I'm looking at. Going down, like dumpster diving here. So if I was to go down and look for a very cheap quarterback, this one is very interesting, and I'm curious to hear the ownership on him. And it's going to be Mack Jones going against Miami. Has a really low total, 43.5 points. They are going to be 3-point favorites against Miami here. You don't really need much here at 4,400. I mean, this is as low as you can really go at quarterback. Solid stacking option in Jacoby Myers, who's 5,100, and just a solid matchup against a Miami defense here. I don't know if there's a ton of upside, but with Mack Jones, with 4,400 salary, you really don't need much. I mean, if I got a touchdown if I got 2 touchdowns, I'd be very happy. But even like a touchdown, a couple hundred yards, 4,400, you really don't need much. And if you do go down and get Mack Jones, you can pay up in other positions, say running back. You can go up and get a Cook, a McCaffrey, a Kamara. So yeah, Mack Jones is somebody that I'll actually. I'm not going to go crazy with it, but he's somebody that I'm definitely looking at in terms of a value quarterback.
5.9% owned. However, he is the 6th most owned 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of quarterbacks. So it drops off fairly quickly there. That's
so people are
yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, so people are taking a look at him. I was curious. I thought it was going to be a little bit lower than that.
Quarterback there that has he's not one of the lowest owns, but I mean he's relatively low owned.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah, but serious risk with that. I wouldn't play him in cash or anything like that. More of like a tournament upside. But yeah, I mean, you don't need all that much in it with 4,400.
That makes sense to me.
Yep. So I guess those are the 4 I'm looking at the most. 2 more I kind of want to point out as maybe low-owned plays here. Sam Darnold for Carolina going against the Jets, 45-point total. He is a 5.5-point favorites against the Jets here. Just a low-owned play with some solid stacking options. Christian McCaffrey, who could obviously get a ton of receptions. Also, Terrence Marshall, who's 3K minimum. I don't hate him as a stacking option as well. Of course, Robbie Anderson, DJ Moore. So lots of weapons for Sam Darnold. The other one being Matt Ryan, who is 6,500. You get that 48-point game total against Philly. Great matchup against a poor Eagles passing defense. And the Falcons throw the ball a ton. You have great stacking options with guys like Pitts, with guys like Ridley, Gage. So Sam Darnold and Matt Ryan. Curious to hear the ownership on either of them. If they are low owned, I might take a couple looks at them.
Matt Ryan is 3.1%. And his Darnold is 1.7%.
Yeah, nice. I like.
Did I miss one, or is that does that?
No, those were the 2 I was looking at in terms of kind of low-owned quarterback shots there.
Tyrod Taylor, 5,300, 0.3% against Jacksonville.
Tyrod Taylor, yeah, Taylor's interesting for sure. Going against Jacksonville, it's a good matchup there. That Houston team is going to be so bad. But yeah, he's solid.
He can run the ball. Anyway.
Yeah.
This is a brainstorming session. We're not saying we're just throwing these names out.
Any other quarterback that stuck out to you in terms of ownership?
Yeah, you caught most of them that I talked about. Tua Tagovailoa, whatever how you pronounce it, he's 5,400, but he's only 0.3% playing against New England. I'm not saying I'd play him, but he is low owned. But that's the ones I was hitting.
Yeah, I'm just not a big Tua guy myself. But low owned.
Anyway, never mind. He was just low owned. I'm not recommending him unless next week if I may come on if he does well and say I.
Yeah, there you go.
Just kidding.
All right, so yeah, I mean, I think the ones we mentioned are pretty solid there. Moving on to running back, and I think running back is going to be very interesting this week because we'll talk about wide receiver, and there are just so many value plays on wide receiver. I don't think I've ever seen anything like it. Like, we'll talk about a ton of value at the wide receiver position where with all this value, you can go up and get these stud running backs like McCaffrey, like Cook, like Kamara, like guys like that. And that's exactly what I'm going to be doing. I mean, starting with Christian McCaffrey, I'm just going to plug him right into my cash lineup. He is 9,500 going against the Jets here. Elite pass catching upside. Basically, with McCaffrey, you get a wide receiver and a running back into one, and you get a very solid matchup against the Jets. You're at home, and he has the highest ceiling on the slate. And something I mentioned last week on the preview show with Jamie was last year, week 1, Christian McCaffrey was 10K, and he's now 9,500. This very well could be the lowest price we see McCaffrey all year. So yeah, I mean, McCaffrey is going to be my highest owned running back. Personally, I know the ownership's going to be crazy on him, but it's really hard to get away from McCaffrey, really on any given week, but especially this week against the Jets. I think it's a very solid look for him here.
All right, McCaffrey, 19.9. But
not as bad as I thought.
There's 2 running backs that are higher than him that we can talk about later.
Okay, yeah, not as bad as I thought, to be honest. But yeah, it's really hard to get away from McCaffrey. Moving on to the next one, and I'm curious to see if this one is actually higher owned than McCaffrey, and I have a feeling it might be. Alvin Kamara going against Green Bay here. He is going to be $900 cheaper than McCaffrey, and the Saints are 3.5-point underdogs. Really nice 50-point total here. So, of course, we know there's no Michael Thomas, so Kamara should get a huge workload. Great matchup against a poor Packers run defense, has pass-catching upside, 88 receptions last year. And the thing with the Saints is, who are they going to pass the ball to? I mean, we'll talk about a wide receiver a little bit later, but, I mean, Kamara is going to get so many receptions, and at 8,600, I really, really do like him this week. I'm curious to see if other people like him as much as me.
Yeah, number 1 owned running back, 24.6%.
Yeah, I kind of figure. I mean, it's hard to get away from Kamara. I mean, with no Michael Thomas, he should absolutely, especially against Green Bay here in a 50-point total game, I think he's a very solid play.
Interesting. Very good.
Going up, I'm really curious to hear the ownership on this guy because first of all, he's an absolute stud. Dalvin Cook, 9,100, but I'm curious to see if he is lower owned than McCaffrey and Kamara because he kind of has the same upside of the two. He doesn't really have that pass catching upside, but Dalvin Cook does bring a lot of other things. He averaged 111.2 yards per game last year and had 17 touchdowns, has easy 25-plus touch upside against a very lackluster defense in the Cincinnati Bengals. So for cash, I'm looking at McCaffrey and Kamara. But for tournaments, if you do want to get a little bit different on Kamara, on McCaffrey, if Dalvin Cook's lower owned than the two, I don't think that's a terrible look at 9,100 there. I think he has the same upside as the two, maybe not in terms of pass catching, but he has the same ceiling. I mean, he can go out there easily and get a couple touchdowns, get 100-plus yards, maybe catch a ball here and there. So, yeah, curious to hear the ownership on Dalvin Cook. The ownership will probably be the biggest factor in terms of how much Dalvin Cook I have.
17.8%.
So a little bit lower than McCaffrey and Kamara.
Yeah, he's number 4 owned running back.
Okay, yep, still up there, but lower than the top two. Okay, moving on. Joe Mixon, going against Minnesota here. We talked about Mixon a little bit, 6,200, averaged 17.3 DraftKings points last year. I think Mixon's very underpriced here at 6,200. And, of course, no more Gio Bernard, which helps. But just for the amount of volume upside that Mixon has, he averaged about 20 touches per game last year in the games that he did play. If you're going to give me 20-plus touches at 6,200 on an offense that I feel like is going to be much improved from last year, and I'm a big Mixon guy. I know he kind of struggled last year. He dealt with some injuries here and there, but I think it's a good spot against a Minnesota team who's not that great defensively, and then the 47-point game total. And I feel like he has some pass-catching upside as well. So, yeah, very curious to hear the ownership on Joe Mixon. He's somebody that really stuck out to me in terms of value, in terms of being pretty underpriced here at 6,200.
Yeah, 11.8%, which is way down from those top four guys. And as we talked about before, you got Burrow coming back from an injury. You're playing Minnesota Vikings. You're going to want to try and run the ball. And they did talk about using Mixon better this year, and he can catch the ball too. So that becomes a kind of tempting, 11.8%.
Yeah, it's more so the price for me. I just think it's way too cheap. I think the opportunities are going to be there. Decent high-scoring game. I can see a touchdown. Yeah, I do like Mixon. And then somebody else, $200 more actually, is going to be James Robinson. So, of course, Etienne is out for the year, which should make Robinson a very great option with tons of volume. And the matchup is what does it for me here. Going against the Texans, really you can't really ask for a better matchup here. They are 3-point favorites. I think it's going to be a positive game script where they get out ahead and they're just going to run the ball. And I think Robinson has a lot of carry upside, some reception upside as well. And yeah, the big thing for me is Etienne getting injured, I believe, out for the year. It's going to give Robinson a lot more opportunities than we originally thought he was going to have. And at 6,400, I think it's a very good matchup, very tempting.
Yeah, 3.6%, so he's fairly low. And, he did it last year. You don't have ETN for the whole year. He's out for the year. Now, with the new quarterback, the worry is that he's good enough that he'll be able to spread the ball around and they won't have to utilize Robinson so heavily that they did last year. That's kind of the drawback, not necessarily week one. But, yeah, it's an attractive number, 3.6%, 6,400. I like that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you mentioned the concerns. Rookie quarterback, new coach, but he did do very, very good last year. So if he can continue what he did last year, this year, I think the matchups here for week one for sure. And yeah, 3%. That's very, very tempting. Another guy that does interest me, another guy that I think is just a little bit too cheap here. So it's Antonio Gibson going against the Chargers with a 45-point game total, where the Washington football team is going to be 1-point dogs. And he did average 14.4 DraftKings points last year per week, and it's not the best matchup in the world, but I just don't really understand this price tag of somebody that has 15 to 20 touch upside at home, solid touchdown upside as well. And yeah, Gibson, it's more so a price thing for me. The matchup scares me a little bit, but it's really hard to see Gibson being at this cheap going forward throughout the season, to be honest.
Yeah, once he starts rolling, he's 22%. He's the number 2 owned running back. So I think that price, people are excited about him. The coaching staff said that they really want to focus on him like a Christian McCaffrey. And of course, they can say a lot of things like that. But I think he was so weird as his rookie year because he really wasn't a running back in college. But he shows a lot of potential. They want to play him. They got a good defense in Washington to get the ball back to the offense. And so that's a nice number. And obviously 22% people are owning him, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, it must be a price thing. Like he's way too. I'd be shocked if we saw Gibson going forward being this cheap. It just really doesn't make much sense to me. So those are mostly the 6 I'm looking at, but there are a few that did stick out in terms of some upside and potential low ownership plays as well. So Raheem Moster for San Francisco going against Detroit. So what you typically have to worry about with Mostert, and this is more season long, is guy's made out of glass. The guy gets hurt. It seems like every single week. But when he does play, like he has put up some serious big games, and if he is low owned, like say sub 3%, I'll be very curious to play him in some lineups. I mean, he has some serious upside, and then on top of that, you're getting him against a Detroit run defense who was ranked 31st against running backs last year. So yeah, if Mostert is low owned, I know he's splitting carries with Trey Sermon, but he has that big playability, and I'm very curious to hear the ownership. If he is low owned, I will be taking some shots in GPPs with him.
6.3.
It's a little bit higher than I wanted. People are kind of on it, but yeah, I mean, it has a ton of upside there.
Well,
Mostert's the high upside guy.
At the beginning of the year may be good. He's healthy, and Trey Sermon maybe hasn't really, maybe they're going to give it to the seasoned veteran. There's a lot of people think Trey's going to be a great running back this year, and so maybe this is a good time to try Moster, except the fact that he's owned by 6.3%.
Yep, so people are definitely looking at the upside, the matchup. Kind of a weird one here. It's more of a game script theory play for me. Kareem Hunt, he averaged 13.9 DraftKings points per game last year going against Kansas City. So this is the highest game total on the slate with 54.5 points. So my thinking is I think Kansas City does get ahead. I think they do lead throughout the game. I think the Browns are going to have to throw the ball. And when they're throwing the ball, who are they going to bring out, to throw the ball to? I mean, Kareem Hunt. Kareem Hunt's going to come out there, catch some balls. I think he has pass-catching ability in a game that's supposed to score a ton. I wouldn't be shocked if Kareem Hunt found the end zone once, maybe twice. I mean, he definitely has the ability. He's a very talented running back. Of course, he is behind Chubb, but in a game script where they are trailing, where they need to throw the ball, I can see Hunt getting some touches here. So Hunt, he is 5,500. I'm assuming he's pretty low owned here.
I can't find him in here. When do the Browns play?
They play Sunday at 4:25.
All right, well, I can't find Hunt in here.
Maybe he's that low owned.
That would be. Here it is. Found him. I must have typed wrong. Okay. 1.9%.
1.9%. Yeah, I mean, I think has some pass catching upside. Yeah, more of a game theory. If the Browns do get behind, I think he's somebody to look at. And then finally, there's a couple more guys, but Mike Davis is interesting for Atlanta going against Philly. I'm not the highest on Mike Davis, but he's going to get the bulk of the carries. He is very cheap, 5,400, a game that's supposed to score decently high. I think Mike Davis is somebody to consider. I'm not excited about it, but he's very cheap this week.
5.8%. A little bit higher than I'd like.
Yeah. Anything stick out to you?
I got one. Damian Harris for New England. He's going up against Miami, who has a good defense, but I just got a feeling about this guy, and he's 3.5% owned. That's kind of why I'm thinking maybe this would be a fun week to start him. Matchup's not exactly what you want, but I know New England, they're a scary scenario where we always worried that we don't know what they're going to do with running backs, but there has been occasion in the past where they do lock in on a running back. I got a funny feeling Harris is going to really do well this year. Maybe if you're scared of Miami this first week, but 5,200 and 3.5% is tempting.
Yeah, I'm glad you say that because I did draft Harris in season long, so hopefully he does well this year. But yeah, I'm with you. Harris against Miami, touchdown upside. Maybe not the most pass catching upside, but yeah, he's very cheap. Somebody I'm definitely looking at there. But yeah, I'm hoping he does well in season long because I did draft him later in the draft. I thought that's a steal. Hopefully a steal.
Yeah, I think it's he definitely could get him late. Oh, I did have one more. You ready for one more?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Phillip Lindsay, Houston's running back. Now, he's supposedly a co-number one with Ingram, and he's just an interesting back that works hard, and he's 4,700 at 0.9% owned, so he's just zero owned. And Jacksonville, he's playing against Jacksonville, so he's a tempting guy. He's a tempting guy. And again, we're dealing with, we don't know what's really going to happen. But David Johnson is now the third down back, the pass-catching back which could utilize him occasionally. But right now, I like Lindsey, at least in the first few weeks as he gets going. Maybe they play Ingram because he's a seasoned veteran, so maybe week 1 isn't the smartest thing. But, wow, that's a low-owned percentage, 8.9%.
Yeah,
8.9%.
Yeah, I don't hate that at all. The matchups there, there are some serious question marks with Houston in general, and especially the backfield. But yeah, week 1, definitely worth a shot at. Yeah, less than a percent owned on Philip Lindsay. He's definitely he has the talent. He has the talent. He has the matchup. We'll see how much they use him week 1.
Yep, sounds good.
All right, so we'll move into wide receivers, and like I mentioned earlier, it's one of those weeks where there is just so much value.
I apologize.
Go ahead.
If we get to a point now, Barkley's supposed to play for the Giants, so that's where we're at. But we'll know more as we progress into the week, and watching Bob Harris's updates on FootballDiards.com.
Mm-hmm.
If this guy doesn't play come Sunday morning, Devontae Booker, he may end up getting a significant role there. And they're playing Denver, though. That's a problem. But he's 0.8% owned in his $4,000 salary. So, put that in your pocket if that scenario happens, which is not supposed to. But we'll keep that in our pocket in case it happens. Sorry for interrupting you.
No, you're good. Yeah, for sure. Do the Chargers play on the? Yeah, they do. Is Eckler going to play? I heard rumors that Eckler might be out.
Well, he missed practice today. Again, we're going to watch the updates from Bob Harris here in the next couple of days. We'll know a lot more. If something breaks, like Friday, if you don't practice on Friday, that's usually a big key. But we'll know a lot. We'll know what's going on before.
Yeah, we'll definitely find out.
We don't know now because we're not sure. But we'll know in time for everybody to make decisions.
Yep, for sure. Definitely some injuries to monitor. So, yeah, like I was saying, it's one of those weeks where I kind of want to pay up for running back and get my McCaffreys, my Camaras, my Cooks, guys like that. And there's just so much value on the slate in terms of wide receivers. Of course, you can go up top and get, your Devonte Adams. I think he's fine every week. Devonte Adams is matchup proof. You can play him whenever you want. Tyreek Hill, you can play him whenever you want. Another guy that's pretty much matchup proof, especially this week against the Browns in a very high scoring game. But up top, the guy that I'm kind of looking at is going to be Calvin Ridley for Atlanta going against Philly here. 48-point game total where the Falcons are going to be 3-point favorites. He has 7,900. He averaged 20.4 DraftKings points last year. And, of course, there is no more Julio Jones, and Atlanta throws the ball a ton. Atlanta threw the ball 39.2 times last year and really should be getting a ton of those targets, obviously, and against a pretty poor passing defense in Philadelphia. So if I was to go up top, of course, Hill's fine, Adams is fine, but the guy I'm really looking at who is cheaper than both those guys is going to be Calvin Ridley at 7,900.
Yeah, 13.7% owned. So he's about the, the sixth owned? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, about the eighth owned wide receiver.
Yeah, not terrible. Do you have the ownership on Devonte Adams?
Yes, I do. 18% owned, 18.2.
Okay, nice.
Not the highest, but we'll get to him in a minute.
All right, I'm looking forward to it. So yeah, I mean, for me, I'm going to talk about a ton of cheap wide receivers here. I mean, there's just too many to not take advantage of it this week, to go up and get the guys you want at running back, quarterback, tight end even. But somebody in the mid-range, there's two guys that I like kind of in this mid-range, 4,500 to 6,500. And the first one being Brandon Ayuk for San Francisco. I'm not in love with this, but I'm a big Ayuk guy. I like the price, 5,700 here in a game where they're going against Detroit, who ranked 31st last year versus wide receivers, a very poor defense in general, and just a solid price, solid upside, and should see a solid amount of targets. But just a guy that I'm pretty high on personally, and I do like the price. I think it's too cheap here, but not something I'm in love with this week.
4.5% owned, which is pretty good. That's not bad.
Yeah, pretty good there.
Because he's really supposed to be the number one receiver for San Francisco, except for the tight end Kittle. So he's kind of the number two, depending on what's going on each week. And he's got a lot of talent. So that is an interesting play. 4.9 is relatively low. Not perfectly low, but that's a very attractive option.
Yep, don't hate it. So this next guy, I mentioned it a little bit earlier, and I think the Cincinnati wide receivers are just way too cheap, especially T. Higgins for Cincinnati going against Minnesota. Here you get the 47-point game total where the Bengals are going to be 3.5-point dogs. That means they're more than likely going to be trailing, which means they're more than likely going to be throwing the ball, in which they do throw the ball a ton in general. We talked about how much Joe Burrow threw the ball last year, 40.4 pass attempts last year. And, yeah, it's more of a price thing for me. But, yeah, T. Higgins, 4,700. The price just makes absolutely no sense to me. He was the wide receiver one last year in terms of DraftKings points scored, and I wouldn't be shocked if it's the same way this year. Of course, they did add Chase for this year, but we saw how bad he's been in preseason. Curious to see how Chase does look throughout the year. But I think right now, week one, T. Higgins against Minnesota at this price tag just seems crazy to me, 4,700.
Yeah, and I've seen Higgins in season long being drafted well. And I think people kind of see that. That was before Chase came out and bumbled like 4 balls in a row. I couldn't believe that in the preseason. Now, great receiver. Took a year off from college. Got some tremendous talent. But, man, he was – I can't believe how little he was ready to go into that preseason game. I'm assuming he's going to progress. But wide receivers can be finicky. And even though he's extremely talented. Now back to Higgins, 11.4%. He's the 9th most owned receiver. I said 13.4. Who knows what I said the first time. So people are, they're interested in him. I think they're seeing what you see. This guy, the first few weeks of the season, he could be the main target. Boyd also is a guy who's going to see a lot of targets, and I just don't see Chase coming in the first few weeks. I'd be stunned if this guy comes in week one as the heaviest targeted receiver for the Bengals and does well. But it could happen, but I'm not banking on that one.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of thinking. If we're going to play Higgins, we pretty much got to play him now, especially at this price. If he comes out here and has a great week one, and we're not going to see him being 4,700 next week. And then, of course, you have Chase, who's probably going to get going throughout the season. So I think a good time to play Higgins is going to be here week one, especially at this price tag.
And Tyler Boyd is $5,200, 1.7% owned. So if you're really looking for a GPP in that game, perhaps Boyd is somebody you ought to think about, and he's always produced very well.
Yep.
So he could have a big game.
Yeah, I like that. But yeah, moving on, we're gonna get into this low 3K range here, and there's just a ton of people that stick out. And the first one being Marquez Callaway, who's going to more than likely be very, very high owned. I'm sure you'll mention the ownership projections in a little bit, but it's just hard to get away from Callaway. The Saints' number one wide receiver with Thomas out. He should get a ton of opportunities at nearly minimum price, and you really don't need much at 3,400. It allows you to go up and get McCaffrey, Kamara, Cook, guys like that. Not the best matchup. It's a tough matchup, but at 3,400, you really don't need much at all. So Callaway, I'm going to have him in cash. As far as tournaments, you can probably get away from him. He's going to be so high owned, but in cash, plug him in, 3,400. The opportunities will be there. The matchup's not there, but at 3,400, it really doesn't matter. So, yeah, especially the game as well. 50-point total in a game where they're projected to be trailing, which means more passing. I think Callaway's a phenomenal play this week.
Yeah, his ownership is 28.8%. The number one owned wide receiver going into this time of the week, and it probably will stay that way unless something quirky happens. But wow.
Yep.
That's just he really looked good in preseason. Winston threw the ball to him, had that 2 touchdowns in that one preseason game. Sometimes preseason can fool you, but right now I think Callaway is the number one receiver for New Orleans. And, of course, Daly we don't care about in the future, but, so anyway, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like I said earlier, the Saints have to throw the ball to somebody, so Callaway is somebody. So we'll see how that works out. But, yeah, very high owned in tournaments. You can probably get away, but cash, I think you got to plug him in. Moving on to another guy up in this 3K range is going to be Marvin Jones Jr. for Jacksonville. Going against Houston, you have a 45.5-point game total where Jacksonville is going to be 3-point favorites. Very cheap, 3,600 here. Love the matchup and the price against Houston. He did very well on Detroit last year. Very good matchup against a terrible, terrible Houston defense, and just seems way too cheap here at 3,600. I think Jones has some solid upside. Curious to hear the ownership compared to Callaway. I'm imagining it's going to be a lot lower. But I think he'll still be a somewhat somewhat high owned in terms of ownership here because he really does stick out to me.
Yeah, 15.2%. It's sixth most owned. I think that's a little higher than you were expecting.
Yeah, a little bit higher than I was expecting. I thought he'd be owned, but I don't know about 15. That is high for sure. But I mean, he's a good place to play.
He's kind of the number one receiver there. I don't know if he really is, but they brought him in to be the senior to develop. You got Chark, who's kind of been forgotten about, but they're going to be throwing the ball to this guy, and it is Houston. But yeah, you're going to have to deal with that 15% ownership.
Yep. Yeah, I mean this low range is just crazy this week. I feel like a lot of people are going to be doing the same thing: go down, get Callaway, get Jones, go up and get McCaffrey. So really curious to see how it all plays out. But hopefully we can get a little bit different coming up here in these next couple plays. Yeah, interesting to hear the ownership on this guy here, Michael Pittman for the Colts going against Seattle. It's actually a really high game total of 50 points, where the Colts are projected to be 2.5-point underdogs. So they should be coming from behind. And yeah, Hilton is out, so Pittman steps right into that number one wide receiver spot. Great matchup against a very poor Seattle passing defense. Again, sneaky high game total in a game where the Colts are projected to be trailing, which means more passing. Cheap 4,100. I think Pittman's definitely somebody to look at this week.
Yeah, and we don't know if maybe Seattle's defense is going to get a little bit better. Nonetheless, now, 17.4%, the fourth most owned receiver, Michael Pittman.
Wow, all these guys down there are so high owned. I'm sure I'll find a low owned one coming up. So there are a few guys that are minimum price that really do stick out to me. Randall Moore, 3,000, the minimum price, Arizona. High total here, 52.5 points. You could stack him up with Kyler Murray, and he is going to be the slot receiver. I think you should see a decent amount of opportunities. And at 3,000, you really don't need much. A couple catches here and there, maybe a touchdown, that'd be sweet, but really not expecting much. Really don't need much from Randall Moore. But at 3K, give me a couple catches, give me 40, 50 yards. I'll be definitely happy with that. But yeah, curious to hear the ownership on Moore here.
7.4%, and this guy looks smooth. I know he's a slot guy, and he's got he's got people ahead of him, not at the slot position, but man, this guy could end up being a nice rookie. But yeah, $3,000, 7.4. So what do you think? Is that too high?
It's not as bad as Pittman and all those other guys that we talked about, but yeah, it's not terrible.
That's tough with rookie receivers, but watching him in preseason, he just had that quickness and the ball catching ability. It's so hard to judge players in preseason, but sometimes you just see something in a player, and that guy, I think he's really got a lot of talent. So he could progress as the year goes on.
Oh yeah, excited to see how he does this year. So a couple more guys that I do want to throw out that some of these should be very low owned that actually does draw some interest for me. So Terrence Marshall Jr. for Carolina, a 45-point game total here, where Carolina's 5.5-point favorites. He's very cheap, minimum price, 3K. Should see a ton of work in the slot. And again, at 3K, you really don't need much, and a solid matchup against a very, very poor passing defense in the Jets. So Terrence Marshall, I'm assuming he'll be low owned, maybe even lower owned than Randall Moore, but I'm not completely sure.
I can't find him in here. Okay, sorry about that.
Oh, you're good.
How do you spell Terrence?
I think it's Terr.
We're going to find him. I can't find him. I can't find him, so I apologize. Where is he?
It
couldn't be that low.
Yeah, I don't think it could be that low.
That's getting pretty low. All right. Well, we're gonna
move on.
We're gonna have to move on. But wait, let me just throw another guy out since we're talking about Carolina.
Okay.
Robbie Anderson, $5,700, 2.2% owned. So
2.2.
He's very low owned. So, and I'll
keep looking
for Terrence. I don't know why he's not showing up.
Okay, yeah, Terrence Marshall and, like you mentioned, Robbie Anderson, and then also DJ Moore. I think they're all in play this week. So moving on, yeah, this guy is a big question mark for me. Devonte Smith, who is 4,500. You can stack him up with Hurts. Question marks. I mean, the price is there. I think he should be the number one option. We just don't know. So for week 1, I'm willing to, in some lineups, take the risk of Devonta Smith. Maybe he does, score a touch. I think the talent's there, but again, it's a rookie wide receiver. We really don't know 100%, but he should be the number 1 guy against Atlanta here, who typically has a very poor passing defense in general. I think Devonte Smith could be solid here at 4,500.
Yeah, it's another fun one. Didn't see a ton of them in preseason. Had the knee problem, but I think they were being very careful about it. 2.5% owned. He's fairly low owned. Again, I think people haven't seen this guy yet. They want to see him, so that becomes an opportunity. And it is Atlanta, 2.5%. But we've seen very little of this guy in preseason.
Yep, I mean, I like it, 2.5%. I wouldn't mind stacking him with Hurts and seeing what happens. Maybe they are able to connect on a touchdown. So, yeah, he did stick out. And then, very curious to hear the ownership on these next 2 guys. I'm assuming they'll be low owned. But Tyrell Williams for Detroit going against San Francisco, you have a 45.5 point game total where they're actually 7.5 point underdogs. So you got to imagine they're going to be coming from behind. They're going to be throwing the ball. And Tyrell Williams is the number 1 wide receiver on the Lions. You got Jared Goff at quarterback, and at this price, you really don't need much. But I feel like he has some serious sneaky upside here at 4,400.
Yes, we talked about him before we went on the air. He's got a whopping 0.9% owned, less than 1% owned. And it's interesting because we don't know. We haven't seen much of him. He's going to a team that's not that great. They're coming back. They got a new quarterback. Tyrell Williams played pretty well for the Raiders the last couple of years. And here he is, $4,400, less than 1% owned. Very tempting. San Francisco is the problem.
Yeah, it's a tough matchup, but you got to imagine that they probably do fall behind and they start passing the ball a ton, and he's the number 1 option at wide receiver. So, yeah, I think he's talented. He has the upside there, and at less than 1% of ownership, I'm definitely willing to take some shots there on that one.
Sounds cool. His coach, the rookie, Amon-Ra St. Brown, who looked really good. He's more of a slotty-looking guy, but he's got a lot of talent. $3,000 salary, and he's only owned by 0.7%. So nobody's believing that Detroit's going to do very well against San Francisco, so perhaps an opportunity there.
Oh, yeah, agreed. My last low-owned guy that I will throw out, Randall Cobb for Green Bay. It's a high total, 50 points, in a game where they're projected to win by 3.5 points. 3,900 here for Cobb. Just a really sneaky option. Of course, Cobb is back with Rodgers and should have some decent success here and just fit right back in an offense that he used to play for. I don't think there's crazy upside here, but it wouldn't shock me if he was able to get a few receptions. Wouldn't shock me if he was able to fall in the end zone at 3,900. Back with his old team here where he did have success in the past. I think Randall Cobb is definitely somebody to consider, and you got to imagine he's going to be extremely low owned here. I can't imagine him being more than a couple percent owned.
1%. And, of course, Rodgers brought this guy in, so yeah, I hate to say he's going to look that way a little more than normal, but he really likes this guy. He thinks he's going to help, so I think he's going to target him a few times. And like you said, 3,900, 1%. New Orleans is the opponent. Tempting.
The chemistry should be there. So we'll see.
Point, yeah.
Anything else that stuck out to you? That's a bit about it on my end.
Yeah, you caught those ones. We've already hit the ones I had on my little crazy list. I'm just kind of glancing right now, but that's the ones that I was looking at. Gabriel Davis, kind of an unknown for Buffalo. He's looked pretty good in preseason. And, they threw a bunch of Emmanuel Sanders they got on that team. I don't know what the heck they're doing. And maybe he's a guy you watch for a week, but he's got some talent. $3,400 and 1.8% owned against Pittsburgh.
Yep. Davis is good. He's very talented.
Excellent.
All right, so yeah, we can move into tight ends here, and for tight ends, it's one of those weeks where I'm just focusing on pretty much 2 players that I'm going to have, but there is a third and a fourth I'll touch on. The first one being Travis Kelsey. With as much value at wide receiver. I'm having no problem at all fitting Travis Kelsey into my lineup. So this is a game that I do want a part of, and Travis Kelsey might be the way that I get exposure to this game. 54.5-point game total, which is the highest on the slate going against the Cleveland defense that typically has struggled against the tight end. 8,300 may seem like a lot, but no, Travis Kelsey is elite. He's very elite. There's really not a close second. I mean, Kittle's up there, but he still does not compare to Travis Kelsey. You factor in the matchup, you factor in the game total. I think Kelsey has a ton of upside and the biggest ceiling on the entire slate, and by a mile. So Kelsey, if I was to pay up for a tight end, it would be Travis Kelsey, and I can see myself doing that quite a bit this week.
Yeah, and Kelsey is the number 2 owned tight end at 15.4%. And so, by the way, we did get a question here from Garrison Gilliam. I said, tight ends, Ertz, Furskers, or Ebron, or Arnold for Carolina. Which way to go? What do you think?
Probably take a shot on Fursker. If I had to take one. Yeah, he's somebody that was going to...
When we get done, let's go through the numbers on there. Arnold is also a guy that they're really using, but probably the most riskiest of the 4. But anyway. So you like Fursker there, okay?
Fursker's decent. Yep, I like him. So the other guy, it's hard to ignore this guy. This guy has to be the number 1 owned on the entire slate, and it's going to be Kyle Pitts. So there are some question marks, of course. He is the rookie. 48-point game total, Atlanta, going against Philly here. Huge savings off of Travis Kelsey. Atlanta passes the ball a ton. He should fit right in the offense. They should get him a lot of opportunities. 4,400, but you got to imagine he's going to be very, very high owned.
22.3, the number 1 owned tight end so far this week. I didn't see him much. I didn't really know him in college. But he caught that one ball a couple weeks ago and ran down the sideline, and I didn't even know it was him. I was just kind of glancing over and says, "Oh my God, that guy's a monster!" And I was like, "Oh, it's Pitts." I mean, what is this? But tight ends don't do well their rookie year. But maybe he's an exception, and we're asking this guy week 1 to go out there. But $4,400 is relatively cheap. But I don't know. Maybe you. What is it called? You zigzag or whatever the word is in DFS. Maybe
you can get away
on him, and you try and get away from him and cross your fingers. But God, he's going to be fun to watch. Oh, I can't wait till Sunday to see this guy. Assuming he's playing Sunday.
Yeah, I can't wait either. Yeah, like you mentioned, Travis Kelsey is going to be lower owned than Pitts. That's just crazy to think about. But then again, Pitts is just so cheap, and the upside is there, but we have those question marks. So, Pitts is a great play. It's hard to get away from him, but it's pretty much those two for me, Kelsey and Pitts. Another guy that I was looking at in terms of a cheap option, Tyler Conklin for Minnesota going against the Bengals here. They are 3.5-point favorites in a 47-point game total. So Irv Smith, I believe, is out for the season, and Conklin is obviously extremely cheap, 2,900. Decent game total here against the Bengals defense, who did rank 26th versus the tight end last year. If I was to go down and punt a tight end, Ferksker's there, and then Conklin was the other guy that really did stick out to me in terms of kind of dumpster diving down there at the bottom range.
Oh, who were you talking about right then? I was thinking about Dan Arnold.
Tyler Conklin.
Oh yeah, Conklin. Now they brought in Henderson in there.
Yep, they did.
So I think they were going to cut Henderson, and they go, "Oh my gosh, we can trade him now to Minnesota." So I think that's the only thing you got to think about is how much is Henderson going to get in after coming to the team, just recently and having to learn things. Do you happen to have the salary for Dan Arnold for Carolina?
Yep, it's 2,600.
Okay, how low is that? Pretty low. I mean, that's pretty low.
Yeah, very low. It's lower than I believe Ferksker and Conklin.
Yeah. So anyway, Garrison, that's a pretty cheap price, and his ownership's going to be. I just looked it up right now. I couldn't even find it. So it's going to be a low ownership if you're talking GPP there for Dan Arnold. And they threw the ball to him in preseason. They like to throw the ball to the tight end. They did it in preseason. He's got talent. We haven't seen it in an NFL game. Obviously, he's a new team, but so there's some things there that are tempting.
Yeah, Arnold's definitely somebody to consider. Yeah, very cheap. I guess one more that I will throw out that kind of stuck out to me. T.J. Hawkinson. Going against San Francisco, 44.5-point game total. They're big underdogs. I think they're the biggest underdogs on the entire slate. 7.5 points, so they should be trailing, should be throwing a lot, and Hawkinson should be seeing a lot of targets. Jared Goff at QB. Tough matchup, very tough matchup against the 49ers, but should see a lot of volume here, maybe potential touchdown upside. Hawkinson, somebody that kind of the mid-range tight end, a little bit higher priced than Pitts, lower priced than Kelsey. He's somebody that kind of stuck out to me there.
Yeah, he's 7% owned. He's like the top 5. He's one of the top. He's tied with Logan Thomas as the 4th most owned. But 7% is a lot lower than 22 and 15 and 10.
Yep, I think Hawkinson's solid.
What, San Francisco is going to be – that defense is going to – they are going to go 110% in that game. Not that they wouldn't anyway, but – I think the sting of last year of having all the injuries and just limping through that season, I think they really want to come out and just set the tone. And, gee golly, you're playing Detroit.
Yeah, maybe that's why the 49ers defense.
I worry about that.
Yeah.
But like you said, they're going to get behind. Can Goff stay on his feet and think, can he get enough targets to Hawkinson is what you want to think about.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's it for me for tight end. It's pretty much Kelsey and Pitts for me this week, honestly. Anything else stick out to you?
No, you caught most of them. I think one guy that we all ought to start watching is Jonnu Smith, assuming he's healthy. I don't think I would play him this week. He's only 3% on $4,100, but he's playing Miami, and he didn't really Belichick really wanted this tight end. Now, they've got 2 tight ends. They've kind of gone back, but, they've done that before and had successful tight ends. I guess I would watch this guy closely and see what you think. Probably too risky to start him this week, but he is a 3% owned player, $4,100. Okay. So that's kind of. Oh, there's an interesting one too. Tyler Kroft for the Jets. I don't think about that guy much, but he was playing pretty well in preseason. They seem to be targeting him. They like him. He's their number 1 tight end for the Jets. He's playing against Carolina, $2,500, 2.3%. So there you are.
Yep, I think he's minimum price as well.
Is $2,500 minimum? You should think I should know that. It's pretty damn low.
That is low, yeah. Solid.
Yeah, so that's another guy to think about. That's a wild card because, preseason can be completely fool you.
Yep, that's the thing. Yep. So we'll definitely find out a lot of things week 1.
Yes, we will. Halfway through Sunday, week 1 is always like you're just sitting there going, God, why didn't I know that? Because we don't know 25% of what goes on. That's why we watch. That's why we play. Is there's some unknown that we don't know, and you just got to live with it. But it does drive me nuts.
Yep. Before we get into defense, did you want to touch on the optimizer and the ownership projections?
Oh yeah. So the ownership projections, they'll be up tomorrow. I'm going to put it up in an Excel. We're still getting the API functioning, so we'll slap that up tomorrow, and it'll be on every week. It's really just too much fun, and it gives you a really neat perspective. The optimizer tool is up. Go under the gaming tab, and it's also on the left side under optimizer, and that's fun. I mean, you get to like unselect people, like say I don't want you to use this player, or I do want to use this player. And you can get, 10 lineups, 20 lineups, 50 lineups. You can download the Excel. It's just, I don't know. You can get lost in that thing finding cool lineups because it figures everything out for you. And you can shape what you want it to look at. Like Callaway. Maybe it's going to pick Callaway in every damn lineup almost. So maybe you want to, undo Callaway and then just kind of see what happens with a few lineups. And maybe you decide... maybe that gives you another perspective. Yeah, it's a fun tool. It's up now. And that's really, really a great tool for DFS, no doubt about it.
Yep. I mean, the optimizer and ownership projections are my go-to for NFL. I think those are, especially if you're doing multiple lineups for NFL, you need an optimizer. You're not gonna sit there making 150 lineups by hand. I'll tell you that. But then the ownership projections are something that neat to look at as well. Maybe find some dart throws, like we touched on a couple of them. But yeah, definitely some sweet tools.
Yeah, Gillian just replied to on tight ends as a tight end 1-2. Also, that is Sam Darnold loved Henderson in New York. Different settings, same results. Maybe LOL, things change. Or whatever. I didn't read it exactly right. But what his point is Henderson played with Sam Darnold in New York.
Mm-hmm.
So Sam Darnold is like an insane wild card because he had such a great rookie year. He really looked like a guy with great promise. Then he got hurt, and then he played a year where he just didn't look like he cared. And now he gets a chance to play for a little while, while people are hurt. But I don't know. I don't know if I trust him, but certainly an opportunity for him. And he's only been there for a week or so, so can he really be ready? So a lot of ifs there, but he did have potential. Sometimes we think back too far. Sometimes if it goes back 3 years, forget about it. A lot of people say, but you're still always fishing for that, that crazy play that makes you a winner. So it's tempting not to look back at a guy's potential.
Yep, I'll have some Darnold. We'll see how it works out. We'll see how that works out.
Cool.
We can quickly touch on defense. I think this is a week where, for me, if I absolutely need to, I'm completely fine with punting down defense and getting the Falcons at 2K. I believe the Bengals are 2K as well. But if I was to pay up, if I had the salary to do so, there are three that do stick out. The first one being the Broncos against the Giants. So this one is actually the lowest total on the slate, which really did stick out to me, 42 points. They are 3,300, so you're going to have to pay up a little bit, but just a low game total on the slate against a pretty poor Giants defense. The other one being the Bills defense going against Pittsburgh. They are 2,500. Just big favorites at home against a team and the Steelers that are going to pass a lot. Maybe some interception upside. Bills are cheap. And then the other one that stuck out to me was going to be the Jaguars defense against the Texans. 2,700, 44.5-point game total. Solid options against a very questionable Texans offense.
You just named the top 3 owned defenses.
There we go.
Jacksonville, 12.4, and Denver and Buffalo, 11.6, 11.7 are almost the same.
Curious to hear.
Atlanta was 8%.
What were the Bengals?
The Bengals, I didn't see them here. You think I could find that? Oh, the Bengals, 0.15 owned. That sounds like a GPP play for you.
It does. Minimum price at 2,000. Yeah, don't hate that.
Wow, that's very low owned.
Yeah, so I mean, I pretty much named the popular ones: Broncos, Bills, Jags. I think I'll probably go to those if I'm able to get them. If not, I'll punt with the Falcons or the very low owned Bengals if I have to.
That'd be crazy. I got to think about that one.
Yep. But yeah, I'm sure we'll talk more Sunday. I'm sure some things are going to open up. Some things are going to change. But that's kind of how I'm looking through this week. I think you could pay down at wide receiver, get a ton of value down there, and then go up and play your studs at running back, at quarterback, and even Travis Kelsey at tight end. That's kind of how I'm looking at playing this week.
Yeah, it sounds like a great plan. There's a lot of opportunity, and there's a lot of holes to fall into, and it's a fun week one, definitely. So are we done? Did we cover everything pretty good?
I think we covered pretty much everything. Talked about a lot of good plays.
Got a couple questions here, which was nice.
Yeah.
So great. Looking forward to Sunday morning, 10 o'clock Eastern time. We got our buddy Jamie back with it's going to be the Jamie and Jason, the double J's.
I like it.
And that's 10 o'clock Eastern time, same place. We'll send out an email. So good luck this week. It's going to be a blast. Tomorrow we already have Thursday night game. I can't believe it.
Yep.
I am numb.
Let's go.
Sound good, Jason?
Sounds good.
All right, guys. See you Sunday morning. Good luck with everything up until then.